Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm gonna unmute you because I have a question for you. Or actually unmute yourself, please.
Hey, Oscar, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good.
Can you go to Board Docs and see if the, hold on here, and see if the video link works?
Yeah, sure. You want me to go on this computer or a different computer?
Hold on here. Now on your computer is fine.
Okay. So go to Board Docs. It's being just a little bit slow.
What's slow, your computer or?
Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
just, yeah, I'm trying to log in and I'm just getting.
Oh, you don't need to log into Board Docs. I just like, even on the public site, if you just go to the web page and go to the public site.
Okay, let me try that. Oscar, how do I go to the public site?
Just go to the homepage.
Okay.
And
yeah.
then you go to, on the left-hand side in the drop-down menu, you go to School Board. Actually, it's just a menu on the left-hand side, School Board. And then at School Board, you go to Meeting Documents since October 8th, 2018.
Okay, I'm not seeing that, Oscar. Hang on. So I'm at boarddocs.com.
No. Go to the Rockham County homepage.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. It's all being streamed live on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. Just testing
Is
the
that
public
Eric
video.
Fitzgerald?
Who is that? I hear somebody hollering at me.
That was Mr. Falk, I believe.
It was
Hey,
me.
what are you doing, fella?
Oh, just having fun. What are you doing?
I'm just having fun. You know, been out gallivanting around the county, right?
Mhm.
Visiting schools, seeing the kids. All right, let's see.
This way.
His class is almost done.
Hey, Eric,
Yo,
Diane said to tell you that your class is almost full.
is it awesome? Good stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do
See,
with them
that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're a legend.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. For sure. Right. Let's see. Board Docs.
Hey, Oscar, can you hear me? This is Stephen King.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on. It's on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that when you click on the video, that the video actually plays.
But it starts at
Okay.
7.
Is that what it says?
It says live,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's got that first slide of your presentation.
Yeah, the slide that says school board meeting April 27, 7
Yep.
p.m.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I just needed to make sure that it's visible outside because I'm logged in with my Google account. And so of course, that's a little different. And so I just wanted some quality control. Thank you, Mr. King.
Sure.
All right, so you don't need me to do it, Oscar?
No,
You
it's all
good?
good. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, yes, sir. Mine's still spinning here, so. Hey, Lowell, you still there?
Yes, I am.
I was gonna say, are you able to work or do you have to work from home? What are you doing?
Well, I'm working from home and Diane's working from home.
Gotcha, yeah,
I still go out, and do job checks and help set doors and put
right.
up operators and things, but kind of reduce exposure to each other in the office.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I tell you what, strange times, strange times.
I didn't know what to think about the meat industry.
Hey, I tell you what, we're in trouble, and heaven forbid it gets any worse in Rockingham County and gets to the plants. I really, really worry about that. I saw an article here just recently about a plant closing out on the Delmarva Peninsula, and it's
Okay.
an organic plant, but they're euthanizing, depopulating 2 million birds there because they can't process them.
Yeah, that's what the person in charge of Tyson Food said the same thing, that they're just on the verge of starting to depopulate animals on the farm.
I was talking to Chuck Horn, a neighbor of mine. He grows for George's, and he said that they were supposed to get a flock today, I guess it was, but they have put them off now. And so, every time they don't get a flock, though, you know how it works. That means the paycheck.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Oh, yes,
And
sir.
Mr. Lowell, I do just want to remind you, just making sure, you guys you are being streamed on YouTube Live. So just so you know.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. So anyway, I really worry about the time in between flocks and what that could do. Boy, scary times. All right, I'm going to mute myself, Lowell. I think I'm supposed to do that.
All right.
See you in a little bit.
All right. See ya. Oscar, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, Dan is not going to be joining us this evening. He's
Okay.
not feeling well.
Thank you. Yeah, we will do a roll call. The clerk will do a roll call when we begin.
All right.
Thank you for letting me know. I know he had said that he wasn't feeling well. Just
Okay.
admitting Ms. Reed here. So Ms. Reed, we do have Ms. Lohr, Dr. McQuilkin, Mr. Falk, the clerk of the board is present, as are Mr. Kiger, Ms. Wolf Garrison, Mr. King, Mr. Hand, Mr. Shiflett, Mr. Fitzgerald. So it looks like we are all assembled.
Okay. Are we ready to get going?
Yes.
And do I need to refresh to join the meeting?
Yes, most likely earlier, if the meeting hadn't started yet in board docs, then you wouldn't have had that button yet. I think Ms.
Here we
Bocock
go.
started that about 5 minutes ago. Good.
Okay, yeah, I just found it. All right. I'd like to call this meeting of the Rockingham County School Board for April 27 of 2020 to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. First order of business on the agenda is approval of virtual board meeting. May I have a motion.
Before we do that, I believe Ms. Bocock needs to do a roll call.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Falk, good evening, everyone. I'll do a roll call. Confirm that you are here. Charlotte McQuilkin,
I think people
Sure.
are going to have to unmute.
Hold on, let me look, make sure that yeah, I'll take care of it. Dr.
Yeah.
McQuilkin, you should be, your audio should be on now.
Here, I'm here. Can you hear that, Pam?
yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Dan Breeden, I understand he will be absent.
Yes.
Mrs. Lohr, Jackie Lohr,
Here. Can you
Chair
hear me?
Falk. Yes, thank you.
Here.
Chair Falk
Here.
and Mrs. Reed, Renee Reed.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we have need to approve the operating agenda for this evening. May I have a motion to that?
Lowell, I think we need to go back for approval of the virtual board meeting.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. May I have a motion for approval of virtual board meeting for this evening?
Superintendent makes recommendation.
So as last time, we are meeting virtually due to safety concerns and in accordance with the March 25, 2020 emergency ordinance enacted by the Board of Supervisors of Rockingham County, Virginia. And I recommend that because of those factors, we hold this meeting electronically.
We have a recommendation by the superintendent. May I have a motion to that effect, please?
I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board meeting be held electronically due to the safety concerns in accordance with the March 25th, 2020 emergency ordinance enacted by the Board of Supervisors of Rockingham County, Virginia.
Thank you. It's been properly moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Now, I
Chair
can't
Falk.
tell you which. Pardon?
Dr. McQuilkin seconded the motion.
There you go. Please take your vote.
I've saved it and it is unanimous. It's just not showing on the scoreboard.
Okay. All right, the motion to approve the virtual meeting has passed unanimously as reported by the clerk. Thank you very much. Now I think we need to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. May I have a motion for that?
I move we approve the April 27th, 2020 agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. May I have a second?
Second,
Thank you, Ms. Reed. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the agenda this evening? I think we might point out that the agenda has been moved around a bit to include the information items first instead of second after the action items. Just wanted to point that out. Please vote. All right, we have Pledge of Allegiance. Does somebody have a flag available?
Yes, absolutely. I just gotta pull it up.
I pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag
Of
of
the United States of America,
America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for
for
which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
visible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice
for
justice
all.
for all.
Thank you. Now, please join me as we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is comments from the public.
I will, as last time, I will read the comments that were submitted by the public. I'm just going to, I wanted to make sure we had the most up to date. And let's see here. Here we go. So the first comment was submitted by Pastor Ryan Cooper. His comment is as follows. Let's make sure this is not too wide here. Let me resize this. Here we go. I have already in the past expressed concern over the childcare component. Not every parent has the means to find childcare at this time. I was told in private that the best approach is to make the decision and then target childcare for those who need it. But with COVID-19 and all of the disruption, families have no means to truly plan ahead. What will going back to school truly look like? Will daycares be open yet? Will the Rockingham County Parks and Rec have enough staff to meet the need for before and after school care because of the staggered start times? I was told by Dr. Scheichel that JMU and Bridgewater will also be sought for volunteers to meet the need for mentoring hours. Will the universities even report on time? The answer to all of this is we do not know yet. With COVID, there are too many unknowns. In my opinion, the reasonable thing to do is to table it for 1 year. To push it through without knowing what the conditions will truly be in August can potentially become a significant burden. Please consider your constituency and delay 1 year. The second comment was from Sandy Hernandez. Good evening, members of the school board and residents of Rockingham County. I appreciate the desire on everyone's part to do all that is possible for the children of our county at a very, very difficult time for them and for all of us. I lead an after-school program at Covenant Presbyterian Church for the children who live in the neighborhood adjacent to the church on Mosby Road. All of the children attend Mountain View Elementary School. The children we serve are from low-income families, and many speak a language other than English in their homes. I have led the after-school program for 17 years and have worked with hundreds of children from the Cedar Hill, formerly National Coach Estates Trailer Park community during that time. I'm well acquainted with the struggles these children have to be successful in school. Before the current COVID-19 crisis necessitated the changes to the current school year, I was extremely concerned about the upcoming change in school schedule for the children of Rockingham County. Now I'm even more concerned. The children our church serves are already disadvantaged in school, many with parents who are unable to help them with homework because of lack of English knowledge. Most do not have computers and reliable internet, and so they are extremely challenged to do their assignments. We've begun to lend books to the children and print out worksheets for them during this time. They simply cannot afford to have 45 minutes cut from their school day during the 2020-2021 school year. Another point of serious concern is the safety of our little ones. In the afternoons when they arrive from school, many have parents who are working when the school bus arrives, and their older siblings in high school are their babysitters, who will care for the children if they arrive before their siblings. Furthermore, after-school programs like ours will be hard-pressed to find enough volunteers to attend to the children if the school day is shortened. Many of our volunteers come after their jobs end for the day. I entreat you to consider the current academic needs and safety of our children, and so reverse the decision to shorten the school day in the coming year. Sincerely, Sandy Hernandez, Associate Director for Alianza Ministries, Covenant Presbyterian Church. And finally, Robin Conrad. The comment is, I have concerns about what the school will be cutting out in order to shorten the school day. I'm concerned about extracurriculars getting cut. Would be nice to see some information about specific plans for the day. And that was the final comment submitted. So thank you to the public for submitting these online as during the previous meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Next item on the agenda is highlight by school board members. I would like to call on Ms. Lohr.
I'm going to pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Couple of things I have. First of all, as you probably know, you're supposed to be a Cub run tonight. So Mr. Boyer sent a special visitor over to my house to join me for the meeting. So I have got Cubby. He's social distancing with me, got his mask on, his Rockingham County mask. He has spent the day with me and prepping for the meeting tonight and looking over the calendar for next year. He offered his opinion on that to me. But we, with this, the way the meetings are, we're not able to go out to the school. So I brought a little touch of Cub Run to our meeting tonight. The second thing is, I know that the supervisors met last week and approved the CIP, which we're very grateful for. I mean, obviously there are a number of things that are up in the air, but the fact that that the committee worked so hard in putting that together, including representatives from Rockingham County, and the future of what construction may look like for some of our schools, and just the fact that they have provided us that support and continued support for our schools is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Dr. McQuilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our folks who are participating in feeding our students. We appreciate from everybody's help from the very beginning, from the preparation of the food to the delivery and the handing out of the food, and we're grateful to the parents who come in and pick up the food. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of our staff people who are participating in the continuity of education, and that everybody is working very diligently, from the teachers to the supervisors. Everybody's working together to make sure that our students have the lessons that they need, and that we're continuing our education. And thirdly, I'd like to thank the students. This is a time like another, and it's 100 years since something like this has happened. So the students are involved in something that is sometimes very mysterious. But we thank them for their diligence and their willingness to work and with the support of their parents. That's my thankfulness this evening. Thank you, Mr. Falk.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Dr. Scheichel.
I want to thank again members of the public who've been willing to view the school board meetings online and to submit comments. Also, like Dr. McQuilkin said, the staff, the parents, the students, everyone has to adjust to this pandemic and how we go about feeding students, how we go about providing educational opportunities. And I think it's been refreshing to see everyone coming together to help out where they can, but also staying away, to meet the social distancing requirements and to make sure that we have the right priorities. It is more important right now that our students are safe and that they, that families can deal with all the things that they deal with. We've already begun conversations about what graduation for our seniors may look like, whether that can be an actual graduation ceremony, the way we traditionally do it, whether that's drive-through graduation, as some school divisions are doing, or a virtual graduation. And so these conversations, include members of the public, and so everyone has been very understanding, and that's good to see. That in a time like this, we notice all the things that we have in common and how we really need to act as a community to get through this time. So I want to thank everyone, for always, working with us and talking to us about how we can, really serve our community in the time that no one has experienced, as Dr. McQuilkin has said. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we're into information items now. Item A is Linville Edom Elementary School update. Dr. Scheichel.
Yes, so I had updated the board previously on the steps that we have taken to investigate the septic field at Linville Edom Elementary School. As you know, back in November, my proposal was to close Linville Edom Elementary School, not this summer, but the upcoming summer, due to the uncertainty with the septic field, and to save financial resources if we felt that location long-term wasn't sustainable for renovating the school. And immediately, of course, as it always happens, there was a lot of public comment about the potential closing of the school. It's a beloved school. It's a small school in a community that truly cares about that building. And so what was really interesting to me was how the process turned into collaboration very quickly. Members of the PTO had meetings with board members, with me as well. And it was an effort to work together to look for potential solutions beyond closing the school. And so with these conversations, we decided to at least determine what alternatives for the septic field existed. And we hired an engineering firm to take a look at the septic system after we found that the current system had only one of 11 lines still functioning. And as part of that investigation, it was determined that there was no way to put a similar system back in at Linville Edom, and that if anything, there would have to be an alternative system. And so the type of system that we asked the engineering firm to investigate and possibly design is a clean discharge system where clean water is discharged into an adjacent stream. And the board, had heard this previously, and since then, we've heard more about the process. So currently, that is in its design phase. We have asked the company to design the septic system for a capacity of 350. Currently, the school capacity is smaller than that, but we wanted to make sure that if we were able to add some students to Linville Edom, that the septic system wouldn't be a barrier. So it's being designed for 350 persons in the building, so staff and students. And once that design is complete, it will be submitted to the Department of Environmental Quality. There, the process can take up to 4 months in terms of soliciting public comment, and then working through the design, and then DEQ may suggest some adjustments to the design. We don't really know at this point. And once those conversations are finished, we will then bring the design to the public and to the school board. And at that point would then be the school board's decision to send the design out to bid. And through the conversations that we've had, that is the point where we're at, where really the process right now is to work through the design, and if it is financially feasible, to then again implement a system like this. But I wanted to make sure that those who were closely involved in these conversations also have an opportunity today to comment on this process. And so Board Falk has also invited the chair of the Rockingham County Board of Supervisors, our funding body and our collaborators in all our efforts, Mr. Bill Kiger, and then also Ms. Sally Wolf-Garrison, whose district Linville Edom is located in, and County Administrator Stephen King as well. So these conversations always take place in a group. And so the update at this point is that we are moving forward with the design, and then as that returns from DEQ and the design is complete, the board has every intent to send it out to bid. And so it looks like we are along a process now where certainly for the near future, Linville Edom, again, unless the pricing is prohibitive, can remain open. And so I will turn it over to Chair Falk to offer his comments on that process. Unless other board members at this point have questions, certainly I can answer any questions later as well.
Great, thank you, Dr. Scheichel. I just want to say what a good experience it has been dealing with the constituents and the interested parties in District 2, and who have been overwhelmingly in support of doing what we can with Linville Edom, while acknowledging that we might have limitations to what we can do. So it's been a good group of people to deal with. I really appreciate their help and their information and their input. They brought things to our attention that helped us a lot in this process. And I want to also thank Chairman Kiger and the members of the Board of Supervisors for their continued support in seeking solutions. And I would like to, at this point, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Chairman Kiger to weigh in with his thoughts, and then we'll go to the rest of the board.
Am I on there?
At the voice, you might need to turn your video on.
I should have my video
Yes,
on.
Mr. Kiger, you are live on the audio, and you would have to enable your camera as well.
Oh,
I can
let's
ask
see.
you to start video. That will give you a chance to.
Okay, there I am.
There we go.
Ah, very good. I know that the Linville Edom elementary school issue has been an issue of much discussion in that part of the county and other places. And I certainly applaud the school board's efforts to find solutions to what citizens bring forward to them and their desires. I personally believe in small community elementary schools. I think they're very important. They identify community to a place and children to a place. It gives them a place to identify with. As with all of our facilities, whether they be schools or county facilities, I think it's also prudent upon the governing bodies to constantly evaluate, particularly with aging infrastructures, whether the cost benefit analysis of keeping a facility open bears out. And so I appreciate your careful concern and evaluation and your continued evaluation of Linville Edom Elementary School. I understand that the alternate septic system will allow for some temporary use for, probably several years and maybe longer in the future if deemed necessary. But at the same time, as I think Superintendent Scheichel said, that, it's for the foreseeable future, as evaluation probably needs to continue on that facility or any facility. I remember quite well our discussions over the Dayton Learning Center for years and how we were going to do that. And we finally got to the point on that it just got to the point we couldn't afford to keep that wonderful building open. We kept it open as long as we could, but it got to the point that we had to return it to something else. And, and that may be the case with Linville Elementary School at some point in the future. It may not be, I don't know. That'll be for the determination of your engineers and your evaluation. But the Board of Supervisors is happy to support your good judgments on those sort of things. And we'll continue to see what we can do to help you facilitate the needs for educating our children, whether it's in Linville Elementary School or any elementary school or middle school or high school that you manage for the education of the children of Rockingham County. As you know, we're just a governing and purse group. We don't make the decisions, and I hope the people watching realize that the Board of Supervisors really doesn't make the decision on Linville Edom Elementary School one way or the other. It's a school board decision, but we respect the school board's decisions, and we have great respect for their judgment and their character, and we hope that they will make good decisions just like we hope we do. And I applaud you for the effort to keep the community in mind. That's always important. And sometimes I think the community needs to understand that, you're able to win some of those fights, and sometimes you lose them, but you don't really lose them. It's because, sometimes things just can't last forever. But in this case, it looks like you found a way to at least extend a little bit of life. I don't know how far in the future that will go, whether it be indefinite or whatever, but that will be under your continued evaluation, and I trust your good judgment on that.
Thank you much, Bill.
Thank you.
Board members? Ms. Laura, anything?
I'm muted. There I am. I just want to say thank you to all the good folks in the Broadway area that reached out and made their voices heard, and the way they made those voices heard. It's great that we live in a community that can be respectful and just caring about each other. And I think we really need to hold on to that caring and kindness in these days. And I'm so pleased that we were able to figure this out and hopefully find some more days for Linville Edom. And thank you to Dr. Scheichel and his team for working on that.
Dr. McQuilkin?
Oh, yes, we're grateful to have a collaborative effort as we make decisions, and we appreciate the community input. We also are looking, and we all keep in mind that we're doing this for the best for the students, and that's our goal. So thank you all for working together.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Falk. It's been a long process for a few months now. We've had a lot of conversations. They've been really good conversations. I would applaud being an old PTA person for quite some time in the county, and really kind of shepherding some of the PTAs. I have to say that my hat's off to Linville Edom PTO, because they did an outstanding job of advocating not only for the Linville Edom community, but for Rockingham County schools in general. And that's the kind of advocacy that we need. They've talked to legislators, they've talked to our funding body and the Board of Supervisors, and they've really, and they've shared with us when they've been unhappy, and they've shared with us when they've been happy. But the dialogue has always been great and respectful. And they've, said to us, tell us what Rockingham County needs, not just what Linville Edom needs, but what Rockingham County needs. And we'll continue to ask them to help us advocate at all levels of the government, particularly with the unique circumstances that we are right now, to do what's best for the students of Rockingham County. So my hat really is off to them. They did a really nice job of having that conversation. We don't know what's going to happen in the future with Linville Edom, but certainly the septic system, with the way it looked a few weeks ago and things like that, has certainly given us some time to evaluate, and then also look at how we can replicate that small school feel in our large schools, those ratios and that kind of caring environment. Our principals out there in some of our larger schools, and I think some of the constituents have heard me say that, they strive to do that every day, but they have a much larger population, and we'll need to continue to look at how dollars and cents can be spent to help them continue to build that in their schools too. So thanks, Mr. Falk.
Chairman Falk, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I just, and to go off the subject of Linville Edom real quick, I want to express the board's gratitude to Cheryl Mass and to Superintendent Scheichel for working with us in this very difficult budget time and unknown and uncertain budget time as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. As you're well aware, our proposed budget's kind of went by the wayside, and we still haven't adopted a budget yet. We've adopted tax rates, but we're waiting on your numbers, and we're kind of waiting on some numbers from us, and we understand those numbers are still forthcoming. And we've cut all discretionary spending. There'll be no pay raises, at least right now. But we have put into placeholder positions things for increases for insurance, though we're not sure that's going to be enough either, but we certainly hope it will be. But we have put in place at least level funding from last year to the schools, with an addition of slightly more than $700,000 to cover the increased debt service. And I think it's important for you all to know that we have some increased expenses that you probably will read about or hear about, so that you understand. But we do need to hire 9 new firefighters to fill a new fire station that soon will be fully constructed, we hope, at Port Road. And we have extra police duty requirements in the Massanutten and McGaggisville area that probably will require new road deputies. We've asked the sheriff to cut back his request for police cars, but there are 5 police cars that have well over 200,000 miles that I'm not sure if they went out in the call, they'll make it to the next one. And we are trying to keep all those costs to only essential costs. And I know you guys are doing the same thing, and we appreciate that. And I think that's important for the community to know that, there are a lot of things that we want and there are a lot of things that we need, but there's things sometimes now that we just can't afford. But essential things we will do, things that deal with the public's safety and health and welfare. We will find a way to make that happen, and we will attempt to keep our employees whole, if nothing else. And 2% stakeholder or placeholder for insurance increases is maybe up in the air. We don't know. It may be more. I hope not, but we just don't know with this current crisis. It's our hope that as soon as possible and reasonably possible, the governor will start to open some commerce back up in the state to get some more money into the local government revenues. As you're well aware, and the stimulus packages coming out of Washington, trillions of dollars have been spent, and 3.5 county governments had requested a placeholder in that budgetary item and stimulus package, and were denied. The money went to needed things, I understand, but we're hoping that in future budgets, as counties' costs are assessed, that the federal government will be as generous to us as they are to businesses and to stockholders of corporations and other people that have received benefit in this. And this is really not a benefit. This is the ability for us to be able to afford the service delivery to citizens that they require. And we're holding the line on taxes, so we're not causing them any more expense, but it's still costing us money to run the fire engines and the ambulances and the paramedics and the public schools when they do open again, and those sort of things. Those are essential costs. As I like to tell people, when you turn the faucet, the water's running, and when you flush the commode, it goes someplace else. And that we try to just to maintain those basic service delivery things. And it's getting more and more difficult for us on a day-to-day basis to do that. And we know you appreciate our dilemma, but we're hopeful. We'll remain positive as far as we can, and we certainly hope and pray for our leaders that they make good, reasonable judgment to help us out of our quandary here. Thank you for inviting us as well, Chairman Falk. Generally, I don't attend your meetings, but I'm glad that you invited us too. And I do miss teaching a great deal. As a matter of fact, I'm teaching my grandson in Chesterfield County via distance learning in Virginia history right now. So I'm having a great time teaching fourth grade history. But having said that, unless do you have any other questions or any other need of us this evening?
No, I don't. Dr. Scheichel?
I just wanted to say thank you to Chair Kiger, for joining us and for, again, for the conversations, as well as Ms. Wolf Garrison and County Administrator King. So we appreciate you joining us for the meeting, as we make our way through, one of the decisions, obviously, that involved, a lot of community sentiment. And again, like was already stated by board members, the way that conversation went with the members of the Linville Edom community was wonderful. And just as you saw tonight as well, with members of the Board of Supervisors and the County Administrator. So thank you, Mr. Kiger. And I can imagine that you enjoy some good old social studies instruction, even if it's online.
I do. Thank you. I miss it, Oscar, but I'm not willing to come back to work. I'm retired.
There you go.
Although
Thank
this
you for
would be
coming.
some time to, have a good government class. That certainly
Thank
is.
you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your work that you all do. You're very important to our community. We appreciate your efforts.
Thank you for joining us, Chairman Kiger. You're welcome anytime. And I did want to, on a personal note, is that a Gibson on the wall behind you?
It is a Gibson. A Gibson. It's a Gibson SG bass. It's the closest thing to my old Gibson EV3 that I used to have. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Very good.
You have a wonderful evening.
Hey, you too. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Next item on the information part of the agenda are updates to the draft 2020-2021 school calendar.
So Dr. Shiflett, you are unmuted. So I will turn this over to you.
All right, great. Thank you. Chair Falk, members of the board, Dr. Scheichel, I've shared with you a draft of the 2021 school calendar. Several weeks ago, I believe Dr. Scheichel had shared a very similar looking draft with you for information. And based on some conversations with Dr. Scheichel and not knowing exactly where we're going to be with staggered start time project, I see that's coming up as an action item. We really went back and revisited the calendar, realizing that we needed to maybe look at early release days. And so traditionally, we've always allowed for early release days the last week of school during exam week. Our students at the secondary level, 8th grade up, are taking exams. We have 8 classes, so with an early release schedule, they're able to take 2 a day, and then school's dismissed 2 hours early. And teachers have found that to be beneficial, those couple of hours in the afternoons to kind of wrap up the school year and so forth. So we added those days back in, and we also added 2 more shortened days for professional development trying to really have a concerted effort second semester to focus on developing and building professional learning communities. And so those are the only changes that we've added to the draft. So it's as it was then, but I do want to comment about January the 15th and April 30th. They are listed on the draft as delayed starts. And we have never done that before in a planned way for professional development. There have been many mornings where, frigid temperatures, we've had a 2-hour delay, or maybe the roads were a little slippery in the morning and we've had a 2-hour delay. But this is planned ahead of time to say schools are going to start on a delay. And the purpose is to have an opportunity to do professional development with teachers first thing in the morning when they're fresh. And then secondly, it's going to allow for the after school activities to continue as normal. One of the snafus we do hit with early release days is, for example, let's say a student who's a freshman or a sophomore and they can't drive, mom or dad or someone, has to go pick them up from school, or they ride the bus home, and then someone has to get them back to participate in, whether it's band practice, basketball practice, indoor track, wrestling, whatever, practice for the musical. And so it's just a little bit, our secondary principals have always talked about, it's a little bit of a hassle. And so as we were meeting in the committee 2 weeks ago, someone suggested, actually it was one of the middle school assistant principals suggested, why don't we try it just to start it late one morning and see what happens. And so we put those 2 dates on the calendar, and that's for, again, this is a draft, that's for you to discuss and to think about, but hopefully at our next meeting, we could get this approved and start publicizing it to our community. Do you have any questions for me?
Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Schiffler?
I do not.
So,
Okay.
Dr. Shiflett, the first day that school will start is August 25th, which is after the fair, correct?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It is. The fair is the week of the 17th, and typically that's that's their teacher work days, and that's really kind of been the norm over the last as many years as I can remember. Teachers are doing their back to school work days and those things, and then we start the 25th, that Tuesday.
Okay. And I know that the December schedule is a little shorter probably than typically in the past, but in the past we've had the luxury of the way the holidays fall and the Christmas and New Year's and things like that. So we have a little bit more, we don't probably have quite as long as we've had in the past, but it more has to do with the way the calendar falls and those holidays fall, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And I went back and looked at our, I think, previous 4 or 5 school calendars, and I think there's just maybe one year in there when we had a full 2 weeks. And really, it really depends on when those holidays fall. And the other thing that we did, if you look at this calendar, is there is a long chunk of time from February the 5th when students would be off on that Friday, and then all the way to April 5th. And so that's almost 2 months with no break. And so we added 2 days in there, the 8th and 9th, to kind of break up that time. That's a long span. And now could be that there's snow days in there, but we have no way of knowing what that would look like. And as we talked to the committee, or as I talked to the committee a couple of weeks ago, we did go back and say, hey, do you want to move these 2 days to December 21st and 22nd? And one of the things the committee brought up, they said, well, if we would happen to have another wave of this coronavirus come through and we shut schools down sometime in second semester, we may be very thankful that we had those 2 days, the 21st and 22nd. And again, we have no way of knowing how things will play out in regards to, inclement weather or, what this pandemic, when it's going to subside, and if it returns, when there will be a vaccine and so forth. So the committee felt really pretty strong that the 8 days there at the winter break would be sufficient. So, and I know people have strong feelings about it, right? I mean, every year when I've been on, as I've worked on the calendar committee, that's sort of what we talked about. And it was about 4 years ago, I think we came to the consensus that it really is going to depend on what day of the week is Christmas and New Year's Day, and then let that determine how we navigate.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions for me?
Dr. Shipley?
Are we looking at this being a action item in our next meeting?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. And do we have any feelings on if we're going to be allowed to start in August?
No, not at this point.
That's all I have.
I think we are very generously supplied with unknowns at this point. Next item on the agenda, CTE Local Perkins Plan for 2020 and 2021.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chairman Falk, school board members, and Dr. Scheichel. It's that time of the year again. In your folders, you should have received a copy of the local Perkins plans for both Rockingham County and for Massanutten Tech Center. These plans need to be reviewed by the board each year before we submit them, and also they're reviewed by the local advisory committee and Blue Ridge Community College. And so this year we have done all of that online, and instead of actually getting signatures from each of the different entities, we sent out copies for review and comment. Just so you know, the Perkins funding is federal funding, and at this time we have no suspicion that it'll be cut or increased, but we expect level funding. We get about $167,000. That's been pretty much level throughout the past few years, 5 years anyway. And we're expecting that again. And that comprises about half of our CTE budget. We get local funds and some other state monies too. Out of that 167,000, you've got MTC's budget there also. Rockingham County provides about $30,000 of Perkins money from our Perkins money to go for equipment and professional development at MTC. And then Harrisonburg picks up another about 11,000 from their Perkins plan. So that's where their money comes from. It goes through the school divisions that participate in the regional center. The most important part of the Perkins plan is the CTEM schedules 17 and 18, which actually outline the budget for each of the plans. And you can take a look there, but I just provided that this evening for your review. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at this time.
Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Fitzgerald at this time?
Mr. Fitzgerald, do you suppose that with the funding extra funding that's coming from the Congress right now, we will see two things happen. One, that you'll have more flexibility on how this money is spent next year and possibly the year after. And if you could carry over more. And the second, do you suppose that there will be additional money for CTE coming? I know you said you didn't know at this time that there was, but is there any inkling that might happen?
Well, for the carryover money, we've already received word that we can carry our Perkins money over from this year to next year if we need to. And that may be something that we have to look at, because some of the things that we ordered in March to finish up equipment orders for the year have not been delivered yet. And I honestly don't know if they're going to be delivered before our June 30 date, when we're supposed to have all that money, allocated. So that may be something that we need to do. Right now we have about, I guess about almost $50,000 of orders that are out that haven't come in. And most of those are for large pieces of equipment. for various programs. So that's one good thing. They've extended that for us for a year till June of 2021. I think we may be in a good position with CTE funding as far as federal funding for maybe some extra funding. Just a feeling I'm getting. Just from reading, there are several thoughts that perhaps the workforce may shift because of all of this, and that could provide some additional funding, but we have nothing in concrete saying that yet.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Typically, Mr. Fitzgerald, if you do have money left at the end of the year, what becomes of that money?
We never have money left at the end of the year, because if you spend your Perkins money down to zero, that makes you eligible for reserve funds. So what it does, any funds that aren't expended by other divisions, if you spend all of yours, then you go into a pool and they will reallocate that money to you. So this year we just got a reserve allocation of about $3,500 extra that somebody somewhere didn't spend, and we'll gladly take that and find a use for it within our program.
There's always more need than there is funding, isn't there?
There is, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Mr. Fitzgerald, I see that the World of Work is still in the budget, and that's typically in the fall, correct?
Yeah, it's scheduled right now for the third week of October. The Pathways Consortium, we met by Zoom meeting last week, and at this point, we're leaving it in place for October because we don't have to make a decision on that probably until the end of June. So we're going to kind of wait and keep our fingers crossed that maybe some miracle we can go ahead and have it in October. If we don't have it, then we'll move it to March, and hopefully that'll work out. And then if
The
not,
weather would be much better in October for it.
it
but
would. We're
we'll take
hoping
what we
in
can get at
October.
this point, won't we?
Yeah, and this year it's at Augusta. It's at the Augusta Expo Land. You know, it alternates between Rockingham and Augusta every year.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Thank you guys for all your support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for all you
Thanks,
do.
Eric.
Next item on the agenda is the attendance report.
In your materials in board docs, you have the March 2020 attendance report, and then also information about the next item, the VSBA School Law Conference webinar on June 5th. Based on the current situation, you know, the school law conference that we typically attend in Richmond is now online, and so there's information about how to register for that webinar. And if you're interested, please let the clerk know so she can register you for that conference.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Moving into the action items agenda, or part of the agenda, we have need to approve the minutes for our previous meeting. May I have a motion to that effect?
I move we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, please cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Field trip, Dr. Scheichel.
Yes. We have one field trip for your approval today. Typically, we've not brought field trips over the last few board meetings, as you know, none of the field trips obviously are taking place this year. But in this case, J. Frank Hilliard has asked for approval of a field trip that is scheduled for the late summer, so before the start of school, and it involves a trip to Florida. And so again, this is all, of course, contingent upon travel being safe and the trip even being possible. But the school did not want to move forward even planning the trip, which is understandable, unless the board approved it. And so this is the World Strides field trip from August 10th to August 15th for 38 students to Orlando and Key Largo, Florida, through They will travel by airplane and charter bus, and the chaperones are listed as well. This is a field trip that was previously scheduled and then had to be canceled due to the school closure. So again, this is only an approval, of course, contingent upon safe travel being possible. And I do recommend approval of this field trip to at least allow the school to move forward with their planning.
We have a recommendation by the superintendent to approve this field trip contingent upon conditions that are currently out of our control, but to approve it if conditions are suitable that they can go. May I have a motion to that effect?
I move we follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve the field trip as presented.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lohr. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Ms. Reed. Please cast your vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, board members. Resolution for First American Commercial Bank Corp. Incorporated lease. Dr. Scheichel.
At a previous board meeting, you had approved the lease for the 3,600 Chromebooks with 3-year accidental damage protection coverages as submitted by the Director of Technology, Kevin Perkins. And so as is common, there's a following resolution. And so this resolution authorizes a lease financing agreement with First American Commercial Bank Corp. This lease is for a refresh of 3,600 Chromebooks to be distributed to students in grades 6 through 9 in the fall of 2020. And I recommend approval of the resolution. We don't typically read these as they're quite lengthy.
Well, it's published for the public to see, and
Absolutely.
I'm thinking the board has looked it over. We have a recommendation by the superintendent to approve and pass this resolution. May I have a motion to that effect?
I move to follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing the financing with First American Commercial Bank Corp. Incorporated in the maximum amount of $1,200,533.31 for 3,600 Chromebooks with 3-year accidental damage protection coverage as submitted by Kevin Perkins.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. May I have a second?
Second.
Now, y'all gonna have to fight it out. Thank you very much. Dr. McQuilkin seconded. Thank you, Renee. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this?
I just want to make sure we clarify the amount, $1,209,533.31, just to
Thank
make sure
you.
that we have the proper amount. Yep.
Did I say the wrong amount? I apologize.
I'd have to double check, but I thought, yeah, I thought that was
I might have messed that 9 up. Sorry.
yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Chair Falk, I believe this needs to be a roll call vote.
Okay.
Would you like me to start that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Charlotte McQuilkin,
Aye.
Jackie Lohr,
Aye.
Lowell Falk,
Aye.
Renee Reed.
Aye.
Thank you.
It's unanimous. Resolution passes. I see Scott has joined us, Dr. Han, for a special education annual plan for next school year.
Thank you very much, Chairman Falk, members of the school board, and Superintendent Dr. Scheichel. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. I would like to say, before I get started, I would like to acknowledge my pride in our special education teaching staff, our therapists, and our pupil personnel services staff, and all the work they've been doing the past couple weeks. They've been reaching out to all of their students and families. Our social workers have been very active in our communities, and I wanted you to know that I'm very proud of the work that they're doing and excited with what they've been doing. Now let's get on with what I'm here for. I'm going to follow on the path of Eric Fitzgerald. I'm seeking actually approval tonight for federal expenditures. You have a summary, the executive summary of the annual plan. We have, to the best of my knowledge anyway, we have acted in accordance with the regulations and guidelines of the federal government, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That remains in place. I have taken this before our Special Education Advisory Committee, and they did approve it earlier this month. Our advisory committee, by the way, is looking better and better. We're getting to be quite an active group, and I'm very excited about that. The next section of the summary is a listing of 22 assurances. We are required to abide by those and try and strive to meet those assurances. I think we do a very good job of that, personally speaking. But that is a requirement in order for us to acquire the federal dollars to begin with. So that's an ongoing task for myself and staff. The regional program is going to be very different next year. There will no longer be regional classrooms. We will be participating. We're actually going to be applying as an individual division for regional dollars, not as a regional group anymore. However, we are going to have an umbrella of services with the 7 divisions that incorporate or comprise the regional program. We will be seeking and continuing to receive physical therapy and occupational therapy services, sign language interpreter services, and board certified behavior analyst services through the regional program, as well as professional development. So it's not going away in its entirety, but it is a very different picture than it used to be for all these several years. I do have the projected flow through amounts for you there. We do have an increase of $73,251 for 611 budget. As of today, we'll see how that plays out, but that we have been notified of that increase. There's also a small increase in the 619 preschool funds of $426. Those funds make up about 15% of the total expenditures for special education programs in Rockingham County. We're continuing to set aside federal dollars as required. This year, our set aside amount for children in private schools is $42,828. That works out to about $2,100, a little bit more than $2,100 per student. Our parents are beginning to take advantage of that money. It was really kind of quiet for a long time, and I'd say over the past 2 to 3 years, that interest is picking up, and more materials and supplies and some therapeutic services are being requested for that money, which is a good thing. Like the Perkins grant, we can carry over money. However, almost all of our money, with the exception of the set aside amount, is tied to salaries. So we don't have any money really to carry over from one year to the next. It's very little, and frankly, it's just subject to some variations of salaries and employment and who worked what time, whatever. Anyway, we are not carrying over much money like we used to. I do have a listing of our initiatives. Those are essentially the same initiatives we've had in place for a few years. They are ongoing activities, and I fully intend to continue to work towards those initiatives. I also have a breakdown of our teachers, local and federal monies. As you can see, as I just noted, there's no more regional program in there. Our December 1st child count, 139, and we have a number of 504 students. It actually brings our count to 1,500 students with disabilities. But this money is just for IDEA students, 1,239 students. Are there any questions?
Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Hands?
To take me off mute. Mr. Falk, just to echo what Scott said, I know that, all our teachers are working really hard, but our special ed teachers and our social workers and our OTs and PTs, have really had to think a little bit outside the box in order to provide the services that are needed for our students. And so I would echo his sentiments about thanking them for all the hard work that they're doing as part of their jobs with Rockingham County. So.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Hand, very much for your information.
Sure, appreciate it. If we do have a passage of this tonight, then I'll be getting the plan to Oscar tomorrow morning for his signature, and then he'll send it on to Richmond.
All right, Dr. Scheikel.
Yep, and I do recommend approval of the special education annual plan for 2020, 2021, as submitted by Scott Hand, Director of Pupil Personnel Services.
We have a recommendation by the superintendent. May I have a motion to that effect? Ms. Reed, you need to unmute, please.
Should I try it again?
Please.
I make a motion to follow superintendent's recommendation to approve the special education annual plan for 2020-2021.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. May I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, any questions, anything further on this issue? Hearing nothing, please cast your vote. Passes unanimously. Dr. Hand, you're on your way.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Scheikel, we're going to discuss the staggered start time project.
Yes, so as you know, again, another project that we had undertaken was the staggered start time project, where the plan was that schools would start at about the regular time at the elementary level, but then later at the middle and high school level, and also to shorten the school day by about 45 minutes. After long conversation and many meetings, with the public and public input, we decided to implement this as a pilot project in the Turner Ashby attendance area, and the school board voted to implement that project, and then also made a decision about middle and high school start time, so that those would be approximately at 9 o'clock in the morning. And we never really got to the point where a start time for elementary schools was approved. We held a focus group with parents, and so we were going to bring the view from that focus group to the school board. And then, of course, schools closed back in March. And so as we realized, that this closure was going to last at least the rest of the year, and that the impact on learning is significant, we had a number of conversations, about this pilot project. And we ultimately felt that, moving forward with a pilot project to test a shortened school day where instructional time is reduced in order to give teachers time to collaborate, to change, the curriculum long term, that may not be the best time for a project like that. As we will return to school, certainly, there will be a lot of need for remediation, a lot of additional instruction. Although the closure itself has given our teachers and our content area supervisors one time to experience really reducing the curriculum to the big ideas, because you can't run school as usual when all the students are at home and not everyone has access to the same material. So there were a lot of conversations about what's the most important stuff, what's the most important content, the skills that we need to make sure our students have, as they prepare for the next school year. And so that's actually a similar conversation, at a much more extreme level than what we would have had in this project. But again, the community has enough to deal with, and our families have a lot to deal with. And we as a school division, will certainly appreciate, I think, when we come back to school, to have consistency across the division, and that this is maybe not the best time to run a pilot project where we talk about reduction in instructional time. And so my recommendation to the school board is to postpone the staggered start time and a shortened school day project to the 2021-2022 school year. And I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Any questions for the superintendent?
So Dr. Scheichel, probably if we were going to postpone it to 2021, 2022, probably we would, obviously there's many up in the airs, as Mr. Falk and Ms. Laura have mentioned, as we move forward. Will you look at kind of benchmarking or sequencing when we start school, when we would maybe need to reevaluate decisions associated with that?
Absolutely. So once we have a better idea when school starts, we will then, create an appropriate timeline. Now, some of the work has already begun. As members of the public spoke at school board meetings, I followed up, many of those with smaller meetings, with individual meetings with parents who had spoken, and we were, in the process of creating a focus group of parents who wanted to be, critics, but constructive critics of the process, to, talk about the ultimate goals of the project and to be engaged with us in that process. And so I've had a number of really good conversations, and I know board members have as well. You've had some meetings with parents who spoke at the board meetings. And so as we move forward, one piece to consider as the economy changes, as hopefully a school returns to somewhat of a normal process, whether for the following year we want to look at a division-wide implementation, or whether we still want to implement it as a pilot project in one attendance area. And that will affect, how we put a focus group together. Because if we were to even consider, the following year to maybe do this district-wide, it'd be, the focus group would include parents from all attendance areas. And so, again, all of those conversations internally have started, but we want to make sure we wait until we have a better sense of, what's going to happen when. And again, this just means that, the project is postponed by a year, and it gives us the summer and then also the fall to work through all the details. And so it'll be a little bit of a different timeline, than this school year, since we proposed, back in November to do this, and then, through the conversations, it turned into a pilot project. And so, some of the work, again, will start as soon as we know our timelines a little bit better, and then we'll put a calendar together of when decisions will have to be made and what the steps along the way will be. And I will bring that back to the board, again, once we have a sense of how that process may play out.
Thank you.
Dr. Scheichel, I would just like to make an observation that I'm very impressed with all of the work that has been done in what you described as examining how best to deliver education to our students in a different way in the situation we're in currently with home instruction and lesson plans being sent home and things like that. And our teachers are doing a wonderful, wonderful job of being innovative and creative and taking advantage of an opportunity that presented itself from a crisis. And your team is doing a wonderful job. Our people are doing a wonderful job, and I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Chair Falk, and I'll pass that on to the team for sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else for the superintendent on this issue? Hearing nothing, we have need for a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation. And I would, as chair, be honored to move to postpone implementation of the shortened school day and staggered start time project until the 2021-2022 school year. May I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none, please cast your vote.
Chair Falk,
Yes.
because we did not have a recommended motion prior to this discussion for action, we will take it manually, if that's okay, by roll call.
Sure, that's wonderful.
Okay. Okay, so the motion reads, on a motion by Chair Falk, seconded by Charlotte McQuilkin, the board voted, or the motion was to follow superintendent's recommendation to postpone implementation of the shortened school day and staggered start time project until the 2021-2022 school year.
That is correct.
So I will do a roll call vote. Charlotte McQuilkin,
Aye.
Jackie Lohr,
Aye.
Lowell Falk,
Aye.
Renee Reed.
Aye.
Thank you. It passed unanimously, or 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to other business, school board questions and or answers. I'd like to call on Dr. McQuilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. I would like to thank everybody who had a hand in making this virtual meeting possible. This is our second virtual meeting, and we've even invited other people to participate in the actual meeting, as well as the public participating through their questions to be read aloud. So thank you all. It's been a unique experience, but it's working out. Thank you.
Ms. Lohr.
So many questions, but all of them don't have answers yet. So I think at this point, I will just say thank you to everyone, and I'll relinquish my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Ms. Reed, give us wisdom.
And turn on my mic too. Mr. Falk, thank you. Many thanks to all of you who are out there. Some of our seniors may be out there still making up their credits for being part of a meeting. And usually we ask them, at the end of the meeting to stand up, and we don't have that opportunity to do that tonight. But we are thinking about our seniors. Dr. Scheichel mentioned that earlier, and celebrating them. The second thing is we're going to go into teacher appreciation is this month. And I was going to mention to you, Dr. Scheichel, maybe at our meeting in May, if we still need to be virtual, by then we should have the list of each of our teachers of the year for individual schools and probably for the district. So it may be nice for us to have a report and celebrate that as part of our first meeting in May. And finally, we've received a lot of input about the staggered start schedules and the times, and we appreciate that feedback that we've gotten. This board is always mindful and thoughtful in their decision-making, and I think we've made the right decision to postpone a year and to talk further about it and go forward from there. And I appreciate Dr. Scheichel's leadership as far as setting the direction for that. It's been great. And finally, hopefully everybody, usually I tell everybody to drive safely home, but nobody has to drive home. Although I believe Mr. Falk may be in DC today, so I don't know, he may have a drive home. But but we are thinking and hoping that all of you are staying safe and well during this time, and hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to have these meetings in person and to have people joining us. And finally, thank you to Mr. King and Ms. Wolf Garrison and Mr. Kiger for sharing their evening with us tonight. We greatly appreciate their support and their conversation, and sometimes their criticism. All of those things, that's what makes our two governing bodies work together, is that dialogue and that conversation. And I'm incredibly appreciative of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reed. Dr. Scheichel.
Yeah, I want to echo what Ms. Reed said. I think many of the conversations that we had at school board meetings were certainly critical, of some of our proposals. But I have to say, it's always interesting when we then follow up and meet. I, want to also commend the school board, for being patient with these Zoom board meetings. Hopefully, they work for you, but even with some of the parents, that have wanted to engage us in these discussions, I've had Zoom meetings with them to, again, continue the conversation. So we're not stopping just because school is closed. Even, tonight's recommendation, came, in part because of many of the conversations that I've had with families. And so this is how this works. I appreciate people who are critics, who are constructive critics, and that's been, a good process. And again, I hope that it also makes the community understand that we really meant it, when we said the public input matters, and that, there are adjustments to things, and that the board very much, receives those comments. And so as for the seniors, I know that's on everyone's mind. I will send out a note tomorrow to all the families. We will likely wait until the middle of May before we decide, what a potential graduation date could be. The reason for that is to see whether the governor follows through on the plans in early May to reopen part of the economy. If that truly happens and we're at a place where testing and contact tracing and isolation can be the new mode where we can reopen the economy, then at that point we can decide at least on a date, and then decide what type of graduation may be possible, but at least give students a date. So by the middle of May, we should have at least that much information, and so we'll send that out tomorrow to the families, along with the information about the pilot being postponed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. I'd just like to add that I appreciate the folks reaching out with very creative ideas on how we might allow our high school seniors some sort of a graduation ceremony. And there have been some very creative solutions offered and some very innovative ideas that have been come up with. And I'd just like to thank everyone who reaches out to us with constructive suggestions such as have been offered. We now have reason to enter closed meeting, and I would entertain a motion to do so, please.
I move that the board enter a closed meeting to discuss and consider the following pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711, A1, personnel, specific public officers, appointees, or employees for the purpose of considering such individual's assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, salary, or resignation.
Been properly moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. It's been moved by Ms. Reed and seconded by Mrs. Lohr. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. It passes unanimously. At this point, we need to leave the public part of the virtual meeting and then enter into a special one for the closed meeting, after which we will come back into this meeting to cast a public vote on decisions, any decisions that may be agreed upon. All right, everyone, welcome back to open meeting. We need to certify that only issues discussed in the closed meeting were by the reason given to go into closed session. May I have a motion to that effect? It's called certifying.
I'll make a motion to certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Do we have Charlotte?
Yes, here I am.
Okay, all right, good deal. All right. All right, Ms. Reed, move to certify. May I have a second to that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I think we need a roll call vote on that.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. Charlotte McQuilkin,
Aye.
Jackie Lohr, do we have Miss Lohr?
Well, we did, but I don't see her now.
You can see her, but her audio is not.
I see her with audio and video, actually.
Oscar, she may need to leave and come back.
Mhm.
I don't see that she's muted.
There you go. Yeah, she left and she's gonna return and I'll readmit her into the meeting.
Do I have audio now?
You
Yes.
do.
You got it.
Welcome back, Jackie.
Yeah. Well, I was making motions and seconding, so I don't, yeah. But aye.
Thank you, Miss Lohr. Lowell Falk,
Aye.
Renee Reed,
Aye.
thank you.
All right, Dr. Scheichel, do you have a recommendation on personnel?
Yes, I recommend approval of the personnel listing dated April 27, 2020 and supplement dated April 27, 2020.
We have a recommendation by the superintendent on personnel. May I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the superintendent's recommendation on personnel.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Been moved and seconded to approve the superintendent's recommendation on personnel. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote.
Did you see the results? I'm sorry.
I don't see it actually.
It passed unanimously. The
All right.
motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
All right, I think that concludes the business that we have this evening for the Rockingham County School Board. I hereby call this Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much for traveling and spending so much time getting here.
Thank you.
Thank
Safe
you.
travels home.
Yeah,
Thank
have
you,
a
everyone.
have a nice evening. And you know,
Thanks.
it's a 8:45. There's the vote.
There it is.
There you go. Have a nice evening, Pam.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too. Thank you.
Thank you.